Hey friends, it's your pal Mike Shea from Sly Flourish, here with another episode of Sly Flourish's Lazy GM Prep. In this weekly show, I go through steps from Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master to prepare for my Sunday role-playing game. In this case, I am running the Shadowdark RPG in a setting known as the Gloaming, part of Curse Scroll 1. Shadowdark RPG and Curse Scroll 1 are available on the Arcane Library web store. This is done by Arcane Library, Kelsey Dion at Arcane Library. Wonderful RPG, wonderful setting. My group's having a great time. We really like it. This show, like all of the work of Sly Flourish, is brought to you by the patrons of Sly Flourish. Patrons get access to all kinds of awesome stuff, tools to help you run your games, a bunch of exclusive adventures, access to the awesome Lazy GM community over on Discord, access to the Patreon Q&A, whole bunch of different things that you get. You get a lot of really cool stuff, you get connection to a really awesome community, and you help support me directly for doing shows like this. Thank you so much for your outstanding support. So, I killed another character last week. I also want to talk about things I suck at with Shadowdark. So let's begin with that. Things I suck at when it comes to Shadowdark. I suck at maintaining turn order. So one of the things that Shadowdark does that's slightly different than other sort of F20 games and D20 games and 5e based games is you're generally always in turn order, and turn order is basically going around the table. So that is actually, even for my players, that is something like hard for all of us to understand. Even when we're doing initiative for a fight, we're kind of used to 5e style. If you roll, everybody rolls and you do it in the order that you rolled, instead of whoever rolls the highest goes first and then it goes around the table, which I think is a fine style too. It's very fast to do it that way, and I like that. And that one's actually not too tricky, but we kind of forget sometimes. But I also forget all the time that we're supposed to maintain turn order and everything else, and that you can sort of group your time together, that everything is supposed to maintain rounds, and you stay in rounds and you go around, and we forget. All of us forget, and we kind of, I suppose we forget because that doesn't sort of fit the style that we want to play, where even when you're in a dungeon and you're crawling through the dungeon, having, going into that sort of 10-minute scene approach instead of having the round by round approach kind of smooths things out sometimes, but sometimes not. And sometimes I just plain forget to stay in rounds. And it can be bad for spells because certain things last a number of rounds. And if you're not tracking rounds, you don't do that. It also isn't great for random encounters. And one of the things that my lazy trick for sucking at tracking rounds is I just kind of roll when it feels right. I just say like, oh, it feels like I haven't rolled for a random encounter for a while. It feels like the characters have done a bunch of stuff. Let's see how bad it is. And that's sort of an arbitrary way of handling it, where the whole idea of tracking rounds is it's not arbitrary. The GM doesn't have to make a choice. The GM just says, oh, has it been 3 rounds? Then we roll a die and we see if we roll a 1. So that's something that I suck at. I suck at tracking rounds. I kind of forget about torch timers from time to time, or I'll forget a little bit about lighting. Most of the time I'm pretty good. If they're going into a dungeon, I know that they need to have a light source. They are tracking light sources, and then I usually will start a timer. I'll have something. My trick is that I've been basically like rolling a D12 and subtracting that number from the number of minutes. So it's slightly less than an hour. And that way they don't know exactly when the timer is going to go out. They don't have like a perfect stopwatch that they can use. And also, I think we've generally come to the agreement that they should not be using a stopwatch or an alarm on their phone to track the timer, because that kind of gets rid of the fun of it, right? Like if you're tracking it on an hour timer and they are also tracking it on, say, like a 55-minute timer so that they know they have time to relight their torch, that kind of is lame, right? Because now you just have this other external mechanical thing that, oh yeah, that alarm went off, everybody light another torch. And it helps you keep track of torches, but it removes some of the suspense of like remembering to light your torch. Now, on the other hand, you think like, well, in the world, they'd actually be able to know that their torch is running low. It's not like a torch goes from fully burning bright to all of a sudden dead, unless something bad happens, which of course, attacking the light is one of the options in Shadowdark, which I have done. And I think that works well, where circumstances just make a torch run out. But that has been a problem. Treasure, I'm not great at. I guess those are the main things. Treasure, I'm not fantastic at figuring out how to reward treasure. One of my players reminded me, for example, that wizards really aren't going to get any new spells if they don't pick up scrolls. So it would be nice if there were more scrolls in there. But then there's that question of like, well, how often should it be the GM dropping in specific items that match characters, and how much should it be rolling on the random list? I feel like the Shadowdark way is more like if you know, that unless it really makes sense for a piece of treasure to be in a particular location, that instead you should be rolling on your random treasure list. And I do roll pretty regularly on that. When they run into certain encounters, I will roll on that list and see what they find in particular areas. But there is that question of like, well, are some characters just limited because they don't have spell scrolls where they discover things? So I don't know. That's an interesting aspect of the game. So I would say that another thing I kind of suck at is I probably have more of a GM hand in the situations than the game would expect from dice rolls. But it did teach me a lot about using like a die roll as an oracle die, where if I don't know what a situation occurred, I will roll a die and let that determine a situation. And I think that fits the ethos of Shadowdark more than me sort of planning things ahead. But I don't think it's out of hand for situations to exist in a location and the players still navigate those situations that we might have in other kind of RPGs. And that means there are some deterministic elements to a dungeon where like a boss might be in a certain location or a monster might be wandering a certain location. And you can still use like an oracle die for like, well, how soon do they pop up, or do they hear the characters or whatnot? But, you know, I think that like being like rolling randomly and then saying like, well, I'm going to change my mind, I'm not going to do that. That's when you probably have a little bit more hand in. And so that's where I'm thinking more about pace. It would kind of suck if they went through a whole dungeon and you rolled random encounters and they never hit one and they never actually had an encounter. That would kind of suck. So I think that the sort of the mix of random and deterministic encounters both matter. So, you know, I think that those are, you know, those are some of the things that I wouldn't say struggle with, because like we're all having a good time, but I think we all recognize like, oh yeah, we were supposed to be in turn order is probably the worst one. Like breaking out of turn order and, you know, losing track of rounds. I guess that's the two, right? Those are the two things that I suck at the most, is I'm not tracking rounds and I don't follow turn order. And if you're not following turn order, you can't really track rounds. So they're kind of comparable. I will remember from time to time and say, okay, like let's start with you and we'll go around, right? And I'll kind of break the conversation. But a lot of times when they're dealing with a situation that isn't combat, all the players are kind of jumping in to talk about what they want to do. And I don't like have a fist where I bang and I say, wait, stop, you know, stop your conversations. You know, Pat, what do you want to do? And then go around the table. So that's a little tricky. One thing that I also suck at, but luckily my friends are helping me with, is we are now playing in person except for one player who's online. We have a phone. They connect to Discord on the phone. The phone is hanging from a chandelier above the table, so it shows the map so that they can see what's going on the map. And I have to remember, we have a little sign for the person that we stand up so we can go, oh yeah, that's where they are in the turn order, so that we can still go around the table and still hit them. So those are some tricky bits that I've been having. But let's talk about the actual game that's been going on. So the characters traveled to the Mire Castle ruins. The Mire Castle ruins is an old ruin of Green Knights. And long ago, they found some remnants of the Green Knights, swords and armor and bones and stuff, and took on a quest to return these artifacts, these relics, to the Mire Castle ruins so they could be interred in their holy place and be fine. So they've been carrying this crap around with them for a long time. And one thing that I kind of suck at, and I have a feeling some of the players kind of suck at, is tracking their items. We're not used to tracking items, and I don't track it for the characters. Like I'm too busy, so I'm not able to kind of audit them on what they're carrying, but I do remind them like, oh, do you have the space for that? Oh, yeah. Or who has that thing? Oh, right. Like sometimes they have a thing that like they didn't explicitly drop but isn't on their sheet, and then they wonder if they have it again. And the answer is you're kind of a hard ass. You say, well, I guess you never picked it up, right? Like if it's not on the sheet, you don't have it, because encumbrance actually matters, and you can't have like your ghost bag with crap that you never wrote down but you still carry with you. So anyway, they've been carrying this crap around with them. I think they've actually had it on their sheets because they've been wearing it. It's like armor and swords. So they've been wielding armor and swords. And it's transferred from character to character for a time because, like, you know, everyone's dead. There's only one character who hasn't died yet. And that's Morgan, who almost died 2 sessions ago and survived this last session and leveled up to 6th. Now the player is out of the country for a while, so Morrigan's going to survive for a good while longer. And I always like it that like Morrigan just kind of, the hand of Morrigan's mother, Gwendolyn, sort of reaches out of a shadow and draws her into another world. And then she disappears for a while and then she comes back later. That's kind of our way of having Morrigan exit and enter the scenes. So the rest of the characters, like, well, none of us are vital to the story, so I guess that's okay. It means we could all wipe out. So they went to the Meyer Castle ruins, and they found out that there's some kind of unholy presence in the Meyer Castle ruins that's ruining things, and they need to stop this unholy presence in order to truly inter the thing. So I wanted it more than just like go to the castle, go through the castle, drop stuff, and you're done. I wanted to have something a little bit more than that. They made their way through the oozy caves. They fought, what'd they fight down there? Some kind of really nasty creature that they battled down in the oozy caves. It wasn't just a big ooze. It was something else, and I don't remember what. But they fought a terror down there. They made their way into the sepulchers of the priests. So this is a bunch of priest tombs of priests of the Green Knights. And then the players are like, well, let's open up those sarcophagus and take whatever's inside. And the Green Knights are like, wait a minute, you're supposed to inter us here, right? And so there was this little bit of like, hey, there was a conflict in the goals of Shadowdark and the goals of the plot. And the conflict was, in the goal of Shadowdark, it's acquire treasure, right? Acquiring treasure is kind of the main thing that you do in Shadowdark. And yet, if they're here to drop off relics from one thing and then raid relics from another, so there's like, well, what if we just have the character who's carrying this stuff go to one room and the rest of us will raid the tombs? And I said, let's pause for a minute. Like, how do you guys feel about raiding these tombs or not? And they finally came to the conclusion, yeah, we probably shouldn't do it. Like, my character would be very upset with the other players, with the other characters, if he found out they were raiding the very tombs that we're trying to put back in place. So they decided they didn't want to, but there was this like, yeah, well, that's missed experience, right? Those are stuff that we didn't have there. Now, I suppose what I could have done is said, hey, you know, you feel the glow of the green, and maybe I should do this. Like, you know, maybe I'll do this the next time they think about it, is by resisting raiding the very temple that they are trying to restore, they get experience for that is equal to whatever the treasure would have been that they would have picked up otherwise. So then there's like a reason, there's a reward for not raiding the tomb as much as there is a reward for raiding the tomb. Maybe not as much because, you know, when you get your rewards for Shadowdark, you still have the stuff that you got. Anyway, so that was an interesting conversation and a good thought. And I think the approach that I just thought of was actually probably a good way to go. So they went into here, they found the Shrine of Titania, and they're like, oh, we never realized that the Green Knights are followers of Titania, right? And it gave them kind of a different view of Titania, because they know Titania is here. This Queen of the Fae is here. And they're like, wow, the Green Knights followed you. And I think that could be kind of a fun way of showing like Titania is more important than they thought. Like there's a whole sect of knights that had followed Titania. So they made their way around. They went up the stairs because they went in the back. They found the mosaic. They saw the shattered halls, decided not to explore that. They went down the other passageway, down around the corner, found more of like a statue of a Fey advisor. There's another one of like, they assume that all of these things do things. There's these row of sarcophagus, right? The sarcophagi of the Green Knights are down here on the side, but he said, I would really like to be interred with the queen, the Night Queen, who worshipped Titania, and her chambers are down below. And he said, like, yeah, there are stairs that go there. But the interesting thing is the stairs are now ruins. But he didn't know that. The Green Knight, spirit of the Green Knight, didn't know it because he didn't see it that way. So then they entered the tombs of knowledge, right? These temples of knowledge down here. And they fought a Drake. What are they called? This guy, I forget what it's called, but he was hunting around in these halls, this unholy creature bound by these grim knights. Or the grim cultists, and he sucked the light out of their torch and then started attacking them. And one of the characters, poor Tribble, threw themselves in front of this guy, and he hewed Tribble down and then cut Tribble in half. And one little trick here is it was sort of like 2 or 3 turns after Tribble had died, and somebody said, oh, wait a minute, I had a luck point. Could we have used that luck point to try to make that attack not a hit? And that would have saved Tribble. And I'm like, we're not going to roll it back at this point. And they're like, ah. And then it felt like, well, we could have saved Tribble, but we didn't. And so that was a little, you have that kind of like retroactive interrupt luck thing. So I don't know. I think were I house ruling luck, I would say that luck really only lets you re-roll your own attack. And you can't affect other things. That way you can use it. There's a nice aspect to that, which is you don't have interrupts. I hate interrupts. I've talked about this for 5e too. And it was a problem in my Cypher game too. Cypher also has these player intrusions that are like interrupts. And anytime you have like a flow of a story and then somebody's like, wait, no, I do X. And you're like, oh God. And I hate it with Shield. I hate it with Counterspell. I hate it with, Silvery Barbs. I don't even light up my game. And having like a luck point where you can use the luck point to turn an attack and make somebody re-roll is another sort of like blue deck kind of nonsense that I don't really like, where re-rolling your own attack, I think it's totally fine. It's on your turn. It gives you like a nice advantage. So I like the idea that you can get more luck points by more things, but luck points can't make you force a re-roll on somebody else. I might talk with the group about that. I don't know if we want to change it at this point. And I'd rather have the conversation with everybody and say, how would you guys feel if luck points were really only usable for re-rolling your own attack and not changing the course of the story? The difference is one of the characters has a sword called Prophecy, and Prophecy offers luck points. And I'm kind of, I kind of like the idea that sword, but even then, I think the idea that sword can only change the prophecy of the one who's holding it, not the prophecy of everything else. It shouldn't save characters from death and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's a really powerful sword, so I don't know. It's a sword that was gifted from what's her name? The witch queen to the Lord of Time. So it's like, that's a really powerful relic, but I don't know. So anyway, they fought this guy. He killed one of the characters, and we ended the session with them here. And they lit up their torch, and they saw a cowering figure in one of the corners, who like an explorer who made their way here. And that's kind of our strong start today. And that's the player's new character who we know nothing about. So we are going to generate a new session planning template. Today is the 5th of May. I am using Notion to do my campaign planning. If you want to learn more about using Notion, there are links in the show notes for how to use Notion. Today is 5 May, the Gloaming. So we have our characters. Morrigan, the elf warlock, has disappeared. Tribble is dead. I think we added Tribble already to our list of the heroic dead. Let's see if I have it here. The glorious dead. And yeah, Tribble, cut in half by a Dralic after leaping in front of Calum. That is the latest, the 14th death of our campaign. They're certainly having fewer deaths now than they did initially, because 5th and 6th level, they actually have a decent amount of hit points. They fight monsters that are sometimes quite lower than them. So Tribble is dead. We don't know. So we have a new character coming in, and we don't know anything about them. That's fun. Uralt of the Riviera, former Knight of St. Yidris, is down here. Lauren, the Goblin Scout Leader, is down here. Dazzler, the Human Witch Frog Shaman, I think their player is back in today's game. And then Calum, the Elf Wizard, who was saved by Tribble. But Calum's kind of a snob and doesn't really think that way. He's like, oh no, I don't know what happened. Like, he doesn't really think, oh my God, Tribble saved him. So I figure cowering in the dark eyes the characters with a heroic spark in their eye. What is the heroic spark? The heroic spark is a new article I just posted to Sly Flourish. You can read about the heroic spark. You can also get wonderful articles like this sent directly to your email inbox by subscribing to the Sly Flourish newsletter. You can find a link in the show notes. It's absolutely free to sign up, and you get articles like this sent every week to your inbox along with a free adventure generator PDF. It's absolutely free to sign up, and it's really worth doing. And Heroic Spark is an example of this week's article. And the idea behind a Heroic Spark is it's a shortcut to avoid the paranoia of bringing new characters into a group. So instead of having 30 minutes of why do I trust this character, I don't trust this character, we're going to aim our bows at each other, and you have to prove yourself to us, and all this other nonsense that takes forever, you can instead say, looking into their eyes, you see a Heroic Spark and know that they are a trustworthy adventurer that would be an asset to your group. And they go, well, do I know that? I'm like, yes, your character knows this. I'm telling your character how they feel, and your character feels like you can totally trust this person. Why? Because I don't want to spend 30 minutes for you to have to build up trust for this character. That's the heroic spark. So we have a whole article here on Sly Flourish about how to use the heroic spark, but that's the sum of what the heroic spark does. The heroic spark basically says, you know as players that character is cool. Your characters know it because you know it, and we don't want to spend 30 minutes of paranoia, playing the game paranoia, when really we just want your group to get together and keep going on their mission. So that's the heroic spark. So they see the heroic spark in their eye is our strong start today. They probably, I don't think they recovered any treasure from the Dralic. So the Dralic's treasure is, well, so we have let's see, a new character is a scene, the Dralic's treasure. And the Dralic was what level? Pretty high. Level 6. So it's a level 6 treasure parcel. I mean, one problem with the treasure boys, sometimes they roll low and they get crap. And they're like, went through all this effort and they got nothing. I am going to add in, I think, 3, here in the Halls of Knowledge, 3 level 3 treasures. So that they found some other stuff down in here. Because it's been a while, they haven't gotten a lot of treasure. And I think these halls, it makes sense for them to have treasure. Let's see. I think I'm going to leave luck the way it is. I'm not going to worry too much about luck. But I do feel like if I were going to house rule luck, I would not let players force rerolls of other characters. I think giving luck to another character is okay. Like when they miss an attack, you can give it to them. But I don't think it works to force monsters to reroll, because I think that takes away a lot of the tension, and it kind of hurts what I think some of the swinging and funness of the game is. I don't know. Should I talk about that? Maybe I'll talk about it. Not using luck to reroll monsters. I'll probably have a conversation about them with that. What else? And then continuing to traverse the Mire Castle ruins. I hope and expect that they will complete this now, and then their options are, then they have a few options about where to go next. They definitely, the Vile Well is one area. If we go, where else could they go? So the Mire Castle ruins are here. They could go to the Greywall Priory to defeat the Knights of St. Idris, to rescue Haldren and recover the Sphere of Annihilation. I can't spell annihilation. There we go. Is there any other steps that they have? I don't know. Should they have another? I don't know if they should have another option between these two things. They could go to Haldren's Tower, but like where's the meat of the adventure? And it's really in those two places. So I think I don't know that we need to have 3 choices all the time. I think those 2 choices, and then if they have their own, they can do those others. But I think as we're narrowing down on the campaign a bit, I think it makes sense that's really, that's really what's going on. So, secrets and clues. Let's take a look at last session's secrets and clues and see what happened. Knights of St. Idris are an offshoot of the Green Knights who used to worship Titania but now worship St. Idris. Yes, they learned that. Mire Castle ruins are a holy site of the Green Knights. It fell in a civil war between the reigning Green Knights and the Knights of St. Idris. Yes, Knights had powerful angels on their side, actually demons in service. This they did not know. St. Idris is a Green Knight in service of Titania who battled demons and devils from other worlds. At one point, he pushed them back into another hellish world known as Kelsavir. They did learn that, but I might reinforce it. The rift couldn't be closed from this side, so the Idris... We'll make that a new secret. Boop. The rift couldn't be closed from this side, so Yidris, the Green Knight, went to the other side and closed it. All thought Yidris had gone, and he was named a saint, but he then returned, and that began the civil war between the Green Knights and the Knights of St. Yidris. 3 priests of St. Yidris have come to the Mire Castle ruins to build a reserve army of undead to augment the Knights of St. Yidris. So I guess that's the unholy. The thing is, am I overemphasizing the Knights of St. Idris? Like, they've done so much against the Knights of St. Idris now. I feel like I'm overdoing it with them. But I don't know. Let's see. We're going to take that. So what we'll do is we're going to grab all these secrets and we're going to move them into the current notes, and then I can remove the ones that don't work. So we got that rift can be closed on this side. Yes, although he was gone, he was returned to saint, but then he came back. 3 priests of St. Idris have come to the Mire Castle ruins to build a reserve army of undead to augment the Knights of St. Idris. St. Idris brought an artifact from Kelsavir able to draw the dead back to life. Unlife. The head priest carries a wand of unlife and a vile book called the Psalms of Mulkabir. St. Idris rests beneath the Greywall Priory. St. Idris has been hollowed out by a Dralic known as Mulkabir. Haldren traveled to the village of Nighthaven. Do we want to make it worse? And now that they fought a Dralic, do we want to have something worse? Let's take a look at our demons here. See what we got. Monsters, demons. Could it be a Balor or be level 16? That would be really, really like hard for them to fight. I think we said it was a Glabrazo, which would be better at that's level 8. Mariliths are level 9. They're harder than a Glabrazo. We could have St. Yidris. It could be, there's no reason it has to be a woman, right? We could have a six-armed male demon that worshipped it. That's a Marilith. That seems better. Hit points are 43. 6 longsword attacks, right? Trade 2 longsword attacks next round to deflect a melee attack that would hit. That's pretty good. I think we'll do that. I think we're going to reskin a Marilith. A male Marilith known as Mulkabir. Haldren traveled to the village of Nighthaven on the edge of the Shimmering Valley where Orcish followers Agidi, the god of feast, mirth, and wilds reside. A narrow path. So these are all Shimmering Valley stuff. These are all good secrets for the Vile Well. So I think all of these secrets are still pretty solid and usable. So I do have an Olgir, a Glabrazo in service of Rama. So I got lots of demons happening here. Do they have devils? I've been focusing a lot on demons. I don't know if they have devils. That's the wrong one. Yeah, they do. Let's look at devils. Maybe we'll use a devil stat block instead. In fact, a devil would make more sense for St. Yidris. We have archdevils. That's probably too hard. Barb devils are only level 3. Aranese are pretty good. I like this. I think maybe it's an Aranese instead of a Marilith. We'll do that. And page for the Marilith. Just so put your page numbers in. 207. Whenever you're dropping a monster in, just drop a page number. It makes your life really easy. And maybe there are devils that are down here as well. I think that final fight could be some devils. Horn devils, iron-scaled hellions as big as ogres with weighty ram horns, slashing tails. 16, 35, 2 burning tridents near or 1 fire blast far. Can double near fly. Ironhide, half damage from non-magical weapons. Woo! Would it be kind of cool that the lead cultist down here is actually a horned devil? Maybe what they find... Or do we want to have cultists? They have so many cultists. We have barbed devils. So I think in our monsters section, we are going to have a horned devil who's running the show and 2 barbed devils. I need a name. I need a cool name for this barbed devil. We will go to the Sly Flourish random generator, available to patrons of Sly Flourish. Find a cool name here. Bakis. The Horned Devil is on what page? Page 207, and the Barbed Devil's on 206. Barbed Devil is on 206. And they are summoning, so these guys, let's see. So we're going to change this a little bit. Where's that cult, the cult group? 3 priests of St. Yidris have come to the Mire Castle Ruins to build it. 4 priests? Or did I say 2? Yeah, these priests are actually devils in service to St. Yidris. The head priest, a horned devil known as Bakis, carries a wand of unlife and a vile book called the Psalms of Mulkabir. I kind of like that. Now we got some fun new creatures to fight. We could throw some imps, right? If we need another sort of random encounter thing, could be imps. In fact, I don't know how much exploring they're going to do, but let's do like a quick, random encounters. We don't need to say where it is because we know where it is. So we have skeletons, a former Green Knights. Green Knight, former Green Knight pages, right? Skeletal veterans, imps. Skeletal veterans will have 1d2, 1d3. Skeletons will have 2d4. And I want to do 6. So what is something, a cursed specter of a priest of St. Yidris, of the Green Knights? That could be a negotiation. What other kinds of things would they find here in the crypts? Giant rats would be fun. I don't need periods at the end of these. And another potential encounter that isn't necessarily hostile. We could have a hidden... We already have one because they're about to meet a character right now. So I was going to have like a hidden explorer, but I don't know that really helps. One more. So they already have like a talking ghost. How about a fey creature, right? What kind of fey creature? A sprite or a satyr. We'll have a sprite explorer of Titania. So those are some random encounters. We're just going to have 6. We'll roll a d6 on it. And that gives us... Oh, and how many diabolic giant rats? Diabolic giant rats. How many hit points did giant rats have? I started with what makes sense, and that could be a lot of rats. Well, they're level 2 with 9 hit points. We're going to do a few less than that. We'll do a d6. Or 1d4 plus 2. I like the curve to be a little bit more, so that's a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 6. 3 to 6 giant rats. I'll make them plus 1. 1d4 plus 1. 2 to 5 giant rats. Cool. Treasure we're going to roll randomly, so I don't think I need to worry about that too much. And then session notes I will write on my sheet. I guess I'll leave the header so that it looks nice. NPCs. So why don't we have Agath, the sprite of Titania. The specter could be Soul, Smile Slicer, Silverwalker. I like that. Who is a former knight priest of the Green Knights. That could be an NPC that they run into. I can blow that away. I don't need fantastic locations. I can kill that. Any other NPCs that they will run into? Anybody else that would make sense here? So I think it just to help me remember their name, and I don't know if I have it even written in here, is the Green Knight. Yeah, I don't remember the name of the knight that they are interring, but the players do. So I should sure write that down. So I'm going to keep a bullet there so I can write it down because I forgot. Any other NPCs that they're running into? I don't think so. I think we're good. This is definitely one where I wish I had my list of NPCs in a nice straight list instead of hidden away in cards. I think we're probably it's too late. I'm too busy to go fix it all right now. So I think that gives me one. I mean, I'll say prep for Shadowdark's pretty straightforward, right? We know we're going to crawl through this thing. I know how that's going to work. I know the story about what's happening on here. And I think that all works pretty well. So I'm pretty happy. Is there anything else I need to prep for today's game? I don't think so. My trick, one big trick that I really like and I feel like is pretty useful is the whole idea of taking a map for your location and printing your map on a piece of paper and taking a pen and writing 1 or 2 word descriptions of each of the chambers right on your own map. And it's a good exercise. It's a pretty lazy way of approaching it. The question is is that enough for you to be improvised, to improvise situations? And I think between having the 1-word description of the location and the secrets that could be discovered and creatures that they might run into, that you can build a lot of variants and you don't know exactly where things are going to go. Oh, I do remember the Oozy Caves. The Oozy Caves did not have ooze and in fact had a giant undead bear. And that's because I got a text message from one of the players who said, I just had a dream where I fought a bear. And so I'm totally ready for today's D&D game. And I was like, oh, guess what? You're going to fight a bear. And so I threw an undead bear in there. And that worked really well. And they fought the undead bear and killed it. And the player was very hey, it was great. So sometimes the players give you... I had a miniature. I brought a bear miniature at the last minute because I was like, I've got an undead bear miniature. So use that. So that was what they fought in the Oozy Caves. I remember there's something in the Oozy Caves that went differently than I had planned. Sometimes the players just give you a knife. And sometimes that knife is an undead bear, and you just attack them with an undead bear. So I think this is pretty good. I felt like some of the story of the halls was thin. Adding the devils, I think, is more fun. They get to fight a new creature type. I think that this works out. This works out better. So I feel like this is going to be more fun. I don't need a treasure, and I think everything else is good. And now I have a nice formatted page that I can drop into my Trapper Keeper notebook, and will work fine. So I'm just gonna print that sucker, print, and off it goes into the Trapper Keeper. So I think we're all set. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with me today while I prepared for my Shadowdark game. If you like this show, you want more stuff like this, the best way to get it is to subscribe to the Sly Flourish newsletter. It's absolutely free to sign up. You can find a link in the show notes. You get a free Adventure Generator PDF and a weekly RPG-related email sent to your inbox every week. You can also support me directly as a patron on Patreon. There's a link for that in the show notes. You get exclusive adventures. You get access to the awesome Lazy GM community over on Discord. You support me directly, and you get a bunch of tools and stuff to help you run your games. It's a really, really good deal. You should definitely sign up. And you can pick up any of my books, including Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, The Lazy DM's Companion, The Lazy DM's Workbook, Forge of Foes, and all of the fantastic books and other accessories and stuff for you to enjoy our wonderful hobby over on the Sly Flourish bookstore. Links for all that are in the show notes. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and get out there and play an RPG.